Okay, so here's everything put together. I skipped out on recording the assembly because it was such a pain in the ass to do. So follow the instructions, but there are some steps I prefer first, and maybe it will help you out if you do plan on buying this figure. So first and foremost, make sure to connect the horse onto the peg. I mean, not the peg, the base first. There are 2 pegs that inserts onto the bottom of the horse's feet, and then you have this pole right here. So work on that first. Now for the body itself, make sure to remove Artoria's head. And before you insert the body, so there's gonna be a peg that goes on her ass, basically, of lack of better words. Before you insert her onto the top of the horse, put the stirrups. There should be pegs like right here. Insert it into the bottom of the foot first. Now for this side, the right side, it's gonna stretch out this plastic out a lot. I wasn't able to. I don't know if it's too short or anything. I read on forums that it's supposed to be like that. When I do insert her right foot onto the stirrup itself, she's kind of, you can't fully push her down onto the seat. So she's kind of like floating in the air a bit. So I'm just going to leave it out like this. I don't want to break anything. And besides, you're not going to display her like this. You're going to have her facing forward. So you're not going to see it whatsoever. So don't force it if you're, I guess this part is too short. Again, I've heard many complaints that it may be a bit of QC issues. Some people were able to solve it. I don't know. I'm not going to risk it. But the thing is, make sure to insert the foot onto the stirrup first, then insert the body onto the horse. Again, there should be a peg, and then put on the cape and her head. Alright, I believe for the instructions, they told you to put on the cape a bit later. Just do it before you assemble the spear and everything else. So that's first thing you should do for the assembly. So another thing you should do is before you insert her left hand, make sure to attach the reins onto the horse first. Now, I didn't do it on mine's. Biggest problem is that the hooks, they're very fragile plastics. So even if I hooked it on, let's say I want to, disassemble her and put her back in the box or something, I'm afraid of breaking it. That's why I didn't hook it on. The right side is long enough, so there's no concern there. But the left side, right? The reins on the left, make sure to insert or attach the reins first and then connect her hand. That way, it makes life a lot easier because you're really going to stretch this plastic out, and that's a bit scary in my opinion. For the instructions, they told you to insert the hands first and then the reins, but do it the opposite way. So that's just some tips on the assembly. Again, for me, the hook seems a bit fragile, so I'm just going to tuck it in the back. It may not look as great, but I'd rather not break the little hooks. The reins, so I'm just going to insert it towards the back, kind of hide it. Still looks good in my opinion, just not the correct way to assemble it. And finally, you would connect her spear. It's relatively easy, it's 2 parts, you just connect it, and there you have it. All done, and it looks great. Starting with the base, it's the typical Good Smile base. You have no cracks on the floor, well designed, different colors on the floor, lots of shading towards this area. It's almost a changing color, gray. And the logo itself, have this nice silver shine to it. Less shinier than previous ones, if I remember, but still looks good nonetheless. It's always better to have these type of bases than, the typical plain black, white, or single color bases. Even the summoning circle, I say that's okay, but I always prefer these kind of bases where they have it symbolizes the floor or something, Great sculpt work all around, the squares, there's different levels and heights to it, so it adds a lot more depth. So first, let's talk about the horse. The horse is wonderfully sculpted, looks great. The silver armor matches Artoria's armor, so that's wonderful right there. And even the sculpt work on the legs, you actually see, the bone, the muscle, and everything. So sculpt work is wonderful. There are some shading towards the bottom, so that's wonderful. And the cloth, or the saddle itself, you can't really see it, but since Artoria is sitting on it, but there are some shading on the saddle, so that's wonderful in my opinion. Again, the armor looks wonderful. Some shading, but there's this nice shine to it. Really no paint issues as far as I can tell. Except for the straps. So typically painting issues on this figure, I know, right? There's painting issues, which sucks because you're paying almost $300 for it, are mainly the gold coloring that kind of bled onto the blue, or sometimes it's just a bit lighter than it should be. And I'll talk about that on Artoria's clothing in a bit later, but so far, I forgot the horse's name, but it looks wonderful. Again, the armor has some nice shading to it, but it has the armor itself, the silver, has this wonderful shine to it, especially when you view it at the right angle or have the lights shining at the right angle. So that looks wonderful in my opinion. One thing I forgot to mention is that the cloth piece underneath the saddle, I forgot what's the proper terminology for it, but you see some actual sculpting lines on it, so that makes it wonderful, and the end pieces right here are all sculpted, and there is some shading. Alright, so for Artoria herself, the sculpt work is amazing. I especially love the sculpted hairlines on the back. I mean, that looks great, especially on the braids as well. So lots of detail there. Now for the cape, there is some nice shading on the back or on top. Only thing is, I kind of wish they shaded this portion right here, but I mean, that's okay. The sculpt work for the cape itself is wonderful. You see some folds, wrinkles, it's being blown in the wind, so very dynamic look to it. Taking a look at Artoria's face, she has this very unimpressed look, right? Not very expressive, although she is using her Noble Phantasm. You would think she had a more expressive reaction or something. But for the clothing, it's great. It's kind of hard to see because there's just a lot of things going on right now. But the painting is wonderful. There is some shading, but it's kind of, again, hard to notice because it's being blocked by the horse or like all these other stuff. But the painting is nice. Again, it's just the gold linings. I don't know if I can focus the camera to show you guys, but let's try. There you go. You can see it's not clean, right? There's some chips on the gold itself, all around. Thankfully, it's only on the gold. There's no like scratches on the blue or anything, but it's just kind of ugly in my opinion. Again, you're spending quite a pretty penny for these figures. So if it's not perfect, it kind of gets annoying, but it's understandable. There is shading on the blue as well, so I really appreciate that. Alright, so for the lance itself, I'm going to butcher the name, but I believe it's called Rongominiad. Again, I butchered the name. The whole entire thing, at least the spirals, is soft plastic, so I do appreciate that. You know, it's not hard plastic, so it's not going to break as easy, but obviously you don't want to bend it or anything. This portion is soft plastic as well. Only the centerpiece of the lance and the pole is hard plastic, so be careful not to break it or anything. Again, it's two connecting pieces you're just going to attach, and it looks wonderful. So my own complaint about the lance, and this is more so specific to me because online, on forums, the pictures, it doesn't seem like people had this issue, or other videos, other people who unbox this figure. So basically the lance, the tip of the lance, you could kind of see the spiral. It's kind of slanted, it has this bent to it. It's supposed to be straight from what I've seen, but for mine it's a bit bent, as you can see. So it looks a bit awkward. But it's soft plastic. I could try to use like a hot air blower or something, try to fix it up, but I don't want to damage the plastic or anything. So it's not as bad as it looks, but just a bit awkward. And it's just how, I guess how it's designed. So bad luck for me, but maybe other players, or not players, other people have this as well. I can't tell in pictures exactly, but to me it looks like the tip was straight, not bent, but I could be wrong. Okay, so for some size comparisons, here's a comparison with a 1/7 scale mash, and obviously they don't look in scale with each other. This is a 1/8 if I didn't mention it before, and again, you can just see the head size. This is a lot smaller. They don't really look great next to each other. Here's another comparison, this time with a 1/7 scale Saber figure by Good Smile, so both in the same company. And again, it doesn't really look as good next to each other. She's almost as bigger, or as big as the horse. Finally, here is a comparison with a 1/8 scale Gilgamesh figure, and now this looks perfect next to each other. Gilgamesh has always been a bit taller than Artoria, so they look good. So my final thoughts on Lancer Artoria from Good Smile Company. It's a wonderful figure, one of the best anime figures, or Fate figures in general, although the price point is very high, and if you're okay with having some slight, I guess, painting issues, because, you know, when you're paying almost $300, you kind of want things to be perfect, but, you know, within this hobby, nothing can be perfect, and that's something I have to admit. No matter how high you pay for a figure, there's always some slight imperfections, but definitely recommend you picking this up if you have, money to spend. Instead of spending money on a gacha, maybe spend money on a beautiful plastic. You never know, right? So that's it, everyone. Hope you enjoyed this. A tremendous thanks to all my patrons for supporting me. If you want to support my channel, check out my Patreon or channel membership. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more Fates content. follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and join my Discord server. All links are in the description. Have an awesome day, everyone. Till next time.